Under threat of attack now, transit through other maritime channels beyond the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran threatening to close all export corridors serving the U.S. and its allies after America reimposed a blockade of Iranian ports. Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying the region's energy shipments either go to everyone or no one. And a backtrack within a day from the U.S. president scrapping a proposed 20% toll on cargo through Hormuz in favor of investments from Gulf nations. The American leader also warning of U.S. strikes on Iranian energy and transport infrastructure next week if Tehran does not return to negotiations. But Iran says it never left the negotiating table, accusing Washington of destroying the memorandum of understanding signed last month. The interim deal gave them 60 days in which to discuss issues, including Iran's nuclear program. But talks have largely stalled amid fighting over the Strait of Hormuz. Hostilities intensifying since the weekend, with the U.S. striking Iranian military assets and Tehran launching attacks on American sites in Gulf nations. Covering developments for CNA is Nick Harper, live from Washington, D.C., and Blake Sifton in Tel Aviv. We'll start with you, Nick. Donald Trump warning of attacks. In fact, the U.S. Central Command saying that fresh attacks on Iran will start 6 a.m. Eastern Time. What's the strategy in this fresh round?
That's right, Wesu. Once again, we're seeing these strikes being expanded and threats from the president that potentially the worst is still to come. We have seen those expanded strikes. We are now into the 5th straight day of strikes, beginning a couple of hours ago with US Central Command posting on social media that those strikes were underway. So really, with those strikes intensifying, with that day after day barrage of missiles from the United States, there is that fear that we're returning to that cycle of violence and potentially heading into a longer-term conflict. Really, the US Central Command says this is all about trying to further degrade the military capabilities that Iran has to ensure that it no longer fires missiles, as it has been doing in recent days, targeting commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. But there is another strategy at play here, and really it's back to that old pressure tactic that Donald Trump likes. He likes to put out threats on social media as a way to try and force the other side to do something that he wants. And in this situation, it's all about trying to get Iran back to the negotiating table. But it seems difficult to think that they may want to do that if those US strikes are continuing. Donald Trump also saying that he could potentially hit strategic infrastructure next week. And he mentioned in particular Iranian energy and transport infrastructure. But bear in mind, those are considered civilian targets and therefore could potentially fall into the category of the US violating international law. So more threats, more strikes, and really, again, that cycle of violence continuing.
Blake, Nick mentioning that both sides issuing threats. Well, threats are one thing, but that could, if misread, tip both sides back, even unwittingly, into full-scale war.
Good evening, Wei-Su. Well, here in the region, this escalation is being viewed very seriously. To begin with, Iran says that U.S. attacks in recent days have caused high casualties. They say that 30 civilians were killed and more than 260 injured in U.S. attacks over the last few days. And overnight, they also say that seven Iranian soldiers were killed and dozens injured in U.S. missile attacks on the Bompur military base. They have accused the United States military of seeking to maximize casualties. They say because a guest house, barracks at the base, as well as guardhouses were targeted. Now, in the past, it's understood that both the United States and Iran, during these exchanges of fire, have sought to minimize casualties. But in response to this attack, the Iranian military has promised a decisive response. Now, for their part, Iran has expanded their attacks on U.S. military assets in the region. They've long been attacking Bahrain and Kuwait, but in recent days, they've also increasingly targeted U.S. Air Force assets in Jordan. And over the last few days, they have also targeted Qatar, with, of course, Qatar being a major mediator in this conflict. Now, so far, Israel has not drawn into this exchange of fire, but there are reports that the military is on high alert with jets ready to take off on a moment's notice. And it's no secret that many in the Netanyahu government have opposed the ceasefire and would welcome a return to open war.
All right, Nick, we've seen this happen before, rhetoric in public and a surprising return to talks shortly after that. Now, given what Blake mentioned, the step up in both pace and scale of attacks, are we seeing a point where both sides have moved beyond a point of no return to negotiations?
Well, in many ways, you'd imagine that those negotiations are on pause, but Donald Trump on Tuesday told Fox News that talks between the US and Iran had taken place on Tuesday. But clearly, those are not direct negotiations between the two sides sitting down around the same table, because much of what is happening seems to have put diplomacy on pause. The fact that the US has returned to that US naval blockade on Iranian ports, the fact that the Iranians are saying they will make it harder for ships to transit the Strait of Hormuz and slow down the reopening of the strait, all of that puts us back into the situation we were in a few weeks ago before that memorandum of understanding was signed. And the Iranians are threatening to potentially choke other waterways, saying that they will stop exports through other areas in the region. And they say that that will affect not just the US, but its allies. It's hard to imagine really negotiations progressing very quickly anytime soon. But you're right, we have seen that in the past, intensifying action, and then talks do take place. So I think we're waiting to see exactly how all of this will play out.
Blake, the mention of the Bab el-Mandeb, the anxieties not just now, but in the last few weeks and months, that not just the Strait of Hormuz, but to the west of that, the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb, concerns that those could be choked off in a conflict as well.
Well, that's right. Iran has shown an ability to target other arteries of energy outflows from the Middle East, not just the Strait of Hormuz. They have attacked the UAE Emirate of Fujairah, which lies at the end of a cross-country oil pipeline in the UAE that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. And when it comes to the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the Houthi movement in Yemen really is Iran's ace up their sleeve. During the war in Gaza, the Houthis regularly attacked shipping through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait on the way to the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, they said, in solidarity with the people of Gaza. Now, when the war with Iran began in February, many observers assumed that the Houthis would join in on behalf of Iran in the same way that proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon did. But to the shock of many, they largely stayed out of the conflict. But it's understood that they do maintain the ability to harass and target ships off the Bab el-Mandeb Strait using anti-ship missiles, drones, and small attack craft. And if there was serious disruption to the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, simultaneous to the disruption ongoing in the Strait of Hormuz, that could be catastrophic for global energy prices.
Thanks. Blake Sifton reporting live for CNN from Tel Aviv, and Nick Harper live from Washington, D.C. An update from the U.S. CENTCOM saying it has completed this latest round of strikes lasting 90 minutes on Iran. Thank you.